Everybody, it's Dianne DeNecochea. I have a lot I want to talk about, but on a very specific topic. So I'm going to jump right in. I'm going to also share my screen about a couple things. So, figuring out your athlete and your player, figuring out their level of play, what college coaches should they email, what conferences, what divisions. How do you figure that out? Whether you're a freshman starting out or a sophomore approaching June 15th or a junior still trying to figure it out with how, things are going in your process as far as talking back and forth with coaches. So just trying to figure that out no matter what class you are is hard. So, first of all, we want your player to look at types of schools. The most important thing is that the player loves or really likes the schools that he or she are targeting. And this is boys, girls, indoor, beach volleyball, any of the volleyball sports that we're talking about. The schools that your player wants to go to, that has to be paramount that the athlete would want to stay at that school, even if they're injured and they can't play anymore, even if their program was cut or something. I mean, it's just, them really liking the school itself, it being a good fit academically. Location wise, it's not good for your player to travel across the country, play on the opposite coast, or be, thousands of miles away if that's not something that they think that they can do or handle from like a homesick perspective. If things don't go well, they don't have family nearby. Some kids love the idea of going home on some weekends here and there. Parents love the idea of watching you play, right? You guys want to watch your players play if possible. So all of that, the location piece is huge. So figuring that out, and also then level of play, right? The academics, level of play, and location are huge. So when we think about academics, I like to think about, GPA. How studious is your athlete? Are they a 4.0 student or higher? I'm seeing a lot of that. And, where academics is number one, they have to go to a really high, quote unquote, high academic school, prestigious school. So there's that piece too. And then also the level. Okay. So the level of play, everyone likes to think of D1, D2, D3, NAIA, all of that, right? Junior college. Those are the five things we're looking at. But it's not necessarily D1 is a higher level. Every single D1 school is not higher level of play than any D2s or any D3s. And then just figuring out, okay, so your athlete, let's say they would like really high academic. If they want to go D1, I don't like players being, D1 or die mentality, but Division One, really high academic, the Stanfords, UCLAs, USCs, all of those great academic schools, Division One, those are also tailoring to the best players in the country. So we really have to look beach or indoor. So we really have to look at like size of school. Okay, so is your athlete super high academic but willing to go to a smaller school, and maybe their level of play, physicality and level is not power four, big football school level. So then you can target the high academic D3. Okay, so kind of figuring out high academic is one thing, but does that mean D1 or D3? D2 is a little, medium academic level. It's not bad by any means. There are a lot of really good D2 schools out there, obviously. And then there's always, well, are you going to go get your master's degree? Are you going to go, do that type of thing after your 4 years? Right? So you can do those types of combinations of things too. So really looking at academics, location, okay, and size of school can help too. Okay, so those are some of the things, and then cost of the school, right? So we're going to go on the assumption that it's not full scholarship. And then if you can get a full scholarship, so you'd be playing Division One, and now they can break up the scholarships if they're opting into the new rule, then it's not always a full, right? Hopefully, but not always. So we're just talking about, like, without thinking about the financial part. If you know you're going Division Three, then we have to look at needs based and look at the financial piece too. So some Division Three schools are outrageously crazy expensive, and then others not as much, right? And then also going in state, out of state, all of that. We have the WUI program out here on the West Coast, Western Union Exchange. So, like if you're in California and you go to Oregon, some of those schools will give you in state tuition, even though you're out of state. The states bordering California depends on the school. Some of the schools want students coming in to their schools. I feel like more state schools, Division two schools are in the WUI program, but not all. So that helps the college. If it's a Division one and you're on full scholarship, your player is less expensive for them if you're out of state and you can be part of the WUI program out here. So that's something to think about too. So I know I'm giving you a ton of information here. I'm going to share my screen because I have something that I have on my website. So I'm going to pull it up, and it's a guide to creating your target list. And then I'm going to talk about level. Okay, so I wanted to kind of set the stage, not talking about level yet. And then I will start talking about how we'll incorporate the level of play into this. So this is your college volleyball target list, a guide to helping you choose the right schools based on location, academics, level of play, finances. I also would add in there size of the school, student population. I feel like a lot of players and kids in general have an idea of, small town, small rural school, 1,000 students, or like a big football school, right? So figuring this part out is important. I like to look at the location by conferences. So looking at all these different, Northwest, Big Sky, Rockies, kind of out west, West Coast, Southwest desert areas, Central, Midwest, Southeast, Northeast, and East Coast. So kind of looking at all the areas. Avalon, my oldest, was like, I don't want to go where it snows, right? So that kind of narrowed things down. Devin didn't really want to be where it was really hot and deserty, like Arizona or New Mexico or Nevada. She really loves the Northwest, or now she's in California. And she was looking on the East Coast, but then it was like she didn't want to be that far away. Okay. So figuring out that is huge. And then it comes down to, okay, so say you're a freshman, you're going to have a wider range, right, of these conferences and areas of the country. I love players to have, if academics are a big deal, or it doesn't matter, even all levels, D1, D2, D3, have a really good mix of all divisions, conferences within those divisions, and then conferences within those divisions based on location, right? So if you don't want to go where it snows, then D1, D2, D3 schools would all be areas where it's not as snowy and cold, right? So you kind of still spread out and expand your list as far as divisions, but then pick the type of area or the closer to home part, right? And then once we start looking at level, I really love it if people can look at, first, you've got to look at yourself as a player. Okay, so we're looking at physicality and by position. Okay, so what position is the player? What is it about them physically? So we're looking at height, approach, jump, touch, just, even liberos, if you're jumping 24 inches or higher, that's athletic, physical, that type of thing. So, speed, things like that, right? So looking at by conferences and divisions, if we're looking at the Power Four and we're looking at front row, then those players really need to be touching almost 10 feet, right? The game is happening at a higher point above the net. So if your athlete wants to go to a big football school that's a Power Four school and they are hitting and blocking, but hitting approach jump touch is 10 feet or higher, then that's a possibility as a middle, outside, or opposite. Okay. So that's kind of like the physicality way that we start thinking about it. Are there anomalies? Are there, or I should say outliers to that? Yes, right? There was a player at University of Arkansas last year that was a libero, became a hitter, and she was one of the best players on the team. She was like 5'7" or 5'8". So we've got the type that's like me or my daughters. Devin touched 10-2 when she was 16, which I did not. I touched 10 feet in college, and Avalon touched 9-10, 9-11. And then once she got to Cal Poly, she could touch 10 feet. She was at a mid-major, though, and a setter. So it's more about like looking at your athlete and their physicality, their athleticism. Okay, so that is huge for being a diamond in the rough, even if we're looking at D2s and D3s. So we've got the large clubs with a really good schedule playing in the open division, power four, physical scoring hitters in the front row, right? We've got diamonds in the rough. I wrote the article about you don't have to be on the best team, right? But that was me. I'm 6'3", kept growing, physical, all of that. So yes, I'm from a really, really small town in the middle of nowhere, but I also happen to be fitting that profile for a Power Four school, right? Or a top Division I program. So that's the thing. It's not about where you're from. It's about the physicality, not even about the team you're on and playing it open. It's about the physicality and getting college coaches to come to your court. Okay, so the other part of this is other types of players and what are the rosters look like. So look on the rosters once you figure out the area of the country, the academic fit, that type of thing, and then looking at the divisions, what types of players are they taking on their rosters? So you're looking at their rosters from the last couple of years. Do they carry, if you're an outside hitter that's 5'9", do they carry 5'8", 5'9" outside hitters on their roster? Right. So that means some coaches love like utility players, right? Like that. So if you're a shorter hitter in the front row, you have to be able to pass, right? So, we've got to have some give and take here. So the players that are playing the top programs in the country are the big, powerful hitters, outside hitters even that can pass, right? That are really good passing, serve, receive, ball control, can play all the way around, hit out of the back row. So those are another outlier, right? The 6'2", 6'3" outside hitters that can jump out of the gym and pass the ball, right? So those are the ones that are going to the top programs in the country. But then if you're 5'8" or 5'9" and can pass and play defense and hit hard and figure out how to score in the front row, so your strengths are ball control, passing, defense, and you're very consistent hitting, you figure out how to tool the block, figure out how to get kills. Those types of players can play mid-major D1, some D1 programs, right? Absolutely. And Division II, Division III, and play in college. So it's just like also the smaller liberos and DSs, right? You have to be very good at passing to play at the higher levels, be super physical, right? Be really fast, really strong, passing, just great consistency, right? Defense. I had a college coach say to me once, lots and lots and lots of liberos can play defense and run down all kinds of balls. There's so many liberos that are really fast and really good at getting tips up, right? Or getting balls up. But it's the serve receive that is huge for college coaches. And it's passing above a 2, right? If we're rating the passing 2, 2.1, 2.2. I mean, somebody that's passing in those range between 2.1 and 2.5 or, somewhere in there is amazing, right? And I don't love to do stats with college coaches club or high school because it's so relative to who you're playing against. That's why stats isn't huge to talk about with college coaches or put in your emails because it's all so relative, right? I think being super consistent is huge for liberos. So just trying to give you a feel for like, so, the big, powerful point scoring, the utility type players. If we're looking at middles, right, middle blockers, we can have a 5'10" middle as long as she's fast, right? Getting to the pins, blocking. A lot of times the smaller middles are faster, can get their hands up and over the net. And then it just depends if we're talking about mid majors and other conferences and divisions, then, being super high, you don't have to be blocking up quite as high, right? So you can be a middle at 5'10", 5'11", but you have to be fast and have a really fast arm, right? So that's kind of like, looking at the rosters again, what types of middles do they take? What height are their middles, right? Then when we look at opposites, a role of an opposite right side is blocking and hitting, scoring, right? So the opposites don't have to have as much of the passing experience. Of course, it's awesome if they can pass. And then the off blocker defense is really important, and right back defense if we're running a 5-1. But the main jobs are hitting and blocking. And so that's just something where that player is going to benefit being more physical, bigger, stronger for the top programs in the country, right? So are there 5'11" opposites? Absolutely. So if we had a 5'10", 5'11" opposite in a Power Four conference on that team, it would just be harder for them to block, right? Because the game is happening at a higher point above their hands, basically. So if your role is blocking, which it is as an opposite, 50% of the role is blocking, the other 50% is hitting, then, we need that blocker to be up high as we get to higher levels. But if we get D2, D3, and just all of the other non-Power 4 conferences and divisions, then we're looking at some people are amazing blockers. Like I've never considered myself a good blocker. I just happen to be a 6'4", 6'3", which made me a better blocker because I was just big. But I know a lot of really, really good blockers that are smaller, but they're just so proficient at that skill, almost like they were born knowing how to block. So once we get to the financial part of this, yes, then you're looking at the financial calculators on the websites of the schools. You shouldn't have schools on your players list that there's no way they could go to, no way they could afford. You could afford with the walk-on or needs-based situation. So you can use the financial calculators. Think about what type of financial aid would you get, FAFSA, all of that, right? Academic scholarships. So all of that, if you know, it's hard because actually you don't know in the beginning, like as a freshman, sophomore, without knowing the interest level of the coaches, you don't know how deep to dig into that, right? Because sometimes the school might be 80,000 a year, but what if the player can get an academic scholarship? What if I'm talking Division 3 or some Division 1 schools that don't have the funding to provide very much athletic money? Then you're trying to cut that 80,000 down per year to 40,000, 30,000. I don't know. Just trying to chip away at that number, right? But the other part of this is also what type of responses is your player getting? Okay, so whoever's responding, and I love freshmen, sophomores to start emailing Division 3 schools if those are on your list. See what kind of responses you get. Just get practice talking to college coaches. And then if you're targeting Division 1 and you're hearing from them after June 15th, who are you hearing from? What's going on that's indicating your level? Okay, and your level meaning the conference, the Division 1 conference. So the schools you're hearing back from are the ones that are indicating that's when it's real, right? That's when it's real, when you know who's responding, who's showing interest, who's talking on the phone with you. You ask, I'd love to come on a visit. And they're like, heck yes, come visit. We would love to meet you. You're in our top 10, you're in our top 5, whatever. or, maybe they don't have the quote unquote list yet, but they're responding and they want you to visit. That's your level of play. Okay. So wherever that school is, whatever conference it's in, that's your level. And then you've got to open up your list. If you don't have other schools in that conference, open up your list and get your activity going hard and strong, because those are the schools that that's your level, right? And that's how you know, just by getting the responses after June 15th for Division 1, Division 2, and Division 3. When you start hearing responses, that's what you're going to know too, right? What conferences in those divisions that are your level. So I also pulled up this flow chart. The flow chart here, what we're talking about is the target list, right? But I just want to review this flow chart and then just have you guys really think about, okay, who's saying yes down this middle column? Okay. Who's saying yes? And then keep moving towards the phone calls and the visits to offer for verbal commitment is the final goal, right? That's what we're going for. If it's Division 3 or Ivy League, it's contingent on admissions, but you would already know through pre-reads and through all the things that the coaches do, getting your transcripts and everything, green lighting you, then offering you. Okay. So any no's, you just kind of take that and say, okay, that school, why did they say no? Do they have other players that are farther along in the process, meaning other players that they're more focused on, other players that are quote unquote better than you, right? So then does that mean that that conference isn't your level? We don't know. If that school at the top of their conference, like they're number, 1, 2, or 3 in their conference, maybe the lower level, lower ranked teams in that conference might work for you. So you kind of have to, figure it out with the college coach. Like, that's fine. You took this other player over me. Maybe they let you know you've had some back and forth. We decided to go with this other player. You can ask follow-up questions with that. Okay. You can ask the college coach, can you provide me with more information and just, let me know going forward, what is it that I need to do to get better? Where do you see me fitting in as far as conferences? You can ask a college coach that, especially if you've started to develop a relationship, the player with the college coach, and then they go with a different player. And so I just wanted to review this a little bit. Obviously, no responses. We're just keeping on, keeping on. I don't want freshmen, sophomores before June 15th to take schools off your list, because I want you to wait until you're a junior. Okay. Until you're in your junior year, junior club season, maybe start taking some off your list that they just have not responded after like 10 emails. And maybe the only time I'm okay with players taking schools off their list before June 15th of their sophomore year is if they know they've decided, I just know I don't want to go there. I just know I don't want to be for 4 years in that town or that place, or I just know I don't want to go to that school, or I've decided to study something else and they don't have that major. Things that are big like that, location, academics, and maybe the school itself, you've just learned more about it and decided, I don't see myself there at all. Even if it was the last place you could possibly play volleyball, you would still go somewhere else, then take that school off your list. Okay, so I hope this has helped you guys. I know it's a ton of information, and sometimes I'm a little black and white with the physicality stuff. So I am talking in generalizations, right? There's always outliers to all of these things, but I just want to be upfront and honest about, you know, just how it is, I guess. The other part about it is ball control is huge for all volleyball players. So just even middle, if the ball comes to you and it's not you hitting or blocking and you're just freaking out and you don't know what to do, you've got to work on your ball control, because that will just not be good for a college coach to see. And it's not good for your team if you can't help them with, just keeping the ball in play. It's not like you have to be an amazing setter or passer or anything like that. but just having ball control for your position as a middle is huge. Serving is huge for liberos. I didn't talk about that a lot, but it's just being of value to your team. And then the college coaches will see that, how you could be of value to their team and what they're looking for in that position, right? But it's just figuring out the levels. So sometimes we have players, I've worked with players that want the big football school, want to go to an Oregon or a Washington or, Michigan or something. And they're just not the level of play. And so then they decide to play club volleyball at those schools. And so you're going to the school that you want to go to and you're still playing volleyball, but it's just in a different capacity. So I'm here to help you guys. Okay, let me know if you have any questions. Take care. Bye.